Hey y'all, Instinct Survivalist coming to you today with another Two-Tip Tuesday. Two-Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 W's, not the 4. And we're going to talk about shelter configurations and why they're important, how we're going to use them, especially in a survival situation. So stay tuned for that. As you can tell, I'm using the photo extender pole. Yeah, some people call it a selfie stick. I can tell you what it's marketed as. Anyway, the reason being is because we're really going on an adventure today. I'm going to show you some different things, but start off with, we're going to talk about the 5 W's. The 5 W's are weather, or wind. I know wind comes from that direction, so we want to make sure that the air or the wind doesn't blow in this direction. I know it comes from the south. We'll make sure that the opening of my tarp is not facing to the south, right? Make sure the wind's at your back. Secondly, water. Now, where I am right now, water's not a difficult thing to find. However, if I go about 5 minutes in that direction, and guys, I'm sorry, it is hot as blazes here in Georgia today. If I go 5 minutes in that direction, a little bit south, kind of eastward, anyway, in the southeastward direction, I know that there is a stream that is active. Some people will call it a creek. It's marked on the map as a stream. Okay, so water, being able to access or get to water itself. Next one, wood. Being able to find things to help you with your fire. Making sure that you have access to wood, whether it's dry, whether it's dead wood, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we have something that we can build a fire with. The next one is Widowmakers. Now, what exactly is a Widowmaker and why is it important? Well, Widowmaker implies that it will make somebody a widow, right? So what it is dead limbs or trees that are standing that could fall on you with any wind, could fall on you at any given point in time without notice, without worrying about whether it's going to harm you or not, because it doesn't really care, right? So let me show you an example of one, and then we'll get to the 5th W. Okay, so a Widowmaker, if we look, is that limb right there. Now I know in this tree, there's a couple of other dead ones. There's a live one and a dead one there. And then one right down here, very bottom, is also got a big dead branch. Now, normally in normal situation, not a big deal, it'll fall, not a big problem, right? However, if you're sleeping in the middle of the night, that thing come crashing down. It can come crashing down into your tarp, into your tent, and, well, you know the rest. So while Widowmakers doesn't seem like a big thing, it's a big thing, especially when you're trying to determine, am I going to set this up for a short-term tent, long-term, whatever it is. We want to make sure, okay? Now, for that special 5th one, for those of you that watch Alone, for those of you that watch Naked and Afraid, for those of you who watch any of those stories, any of the TV shows, anything in reality, or if you don't, the 5th one is wildlife. Well, what do you mean? So I know that there may be wildlife that I need to catch, whether it be fish, whether it be squirrels, things of that nature. Those are good wildlife. However, what you also need to be aware of is tracks from predatory animals. An example being bears. Okay, bears. You see bear scat laying around, big bear paws, you might want to be a little cautious. Is that the best place for you to go in and set up your tent, set up your tarp? No, probably not. Wolves, mountain lions, the list goes on. Now in my neck of the woods, the biggest things I have to worry about are bears. And typically, you can find a couple of mountain lions, but mostly bobcats. Now, bobcats will come in, they'll scratch you to death, pretty much mess you up that way. But the biggest problem that I face in the neck of the woods I'm in is bears. So, as we've seen on several shows, I'll go around, go walking through the woods and go, hey bear. In fact, that's what we do to my dog. So let's look at the second part, or the second tip, if you will, which is the tarp configurations. Okay, y'all. For those of you that didn't see the backyard tour, if you will, even if you did see it, I didn't show this part. So this is my little nature area, if you will. Okay, cool. Anyway, so what we've got here try to keep the camera from shaking all over the daggum place. I hate that. We've got two different setups. One is a lean-to, and one is a modified plow point. The reason I say modified is because it's actually with a rectangle, not a square. What these both are shelters that have been set up within 5 minutes. Now, what does that mean? So you can see that this is my emergency blanket. I've got the silver on the inside, so if I create a fire out here, it reflects in the heat and it heats me up. The other side of that, literally, is the 3 black X's against the orange. The stress signal, emergency shelter, emergency setup, way to go, right? That's what we want to deal with. Now, how did I set this up? And again, remember we talked about this being 5-minute shelters. So what I did, and although it doesn't look pretty, I literally put in a bowline knot, ran a toggle through it. You see my toggle. Ran it through the edge of the tarp and then tighten it up. Now on the other side, the plan was, because I do keep one on my cordage, I do keep a prusik knot. That was the idea for there. However, I had a lot of daggum cordage, shorter trees than I expected, so it looks kind of weird. But what it is I looped it around. I looped it around the tree, and what I have is a taut line hitch right here. So that's all that is. That's my taut line hitch. The other loop was simply just to kind of tighten it and snug it down a little bit more, because I didn't have the ability to go in and make it long enough or tight enough and get me exactly what I needed. So again, as I mentioned in the feather sticks, maybe it's not pretty, but it is definitively functional. I would put this out in heavy winds anytime I need to. The back end we've just taken and pulled it backwards and staked it off on both sides. And just to kind of give you some measurement wise, this is about belt high, okay? And the reason being is because if I put it about belt high, it gives me enough angle that I can get back to the back of that, and I've got plenty of room, okay? So there's that one. Again, a 5-minute shelter, being able to put that up and make it functional so that it fits my specific need if the weather was coming up, weather was popping up, or I needed to do something quickly. The other side is, again, a modified plow point. So I'm going to show you both angles of this. And what I'm using in this case is just a 5x7 messed tarp. It's one I keep in my bag. And I've actually run the ridge line straight from the top down and tied it off down here with a stake. Now, why did I use a ridge line as opposed to just tying it off the top? Main reason is just I wanted to make sure I had a little bit more room in the top. The other option is I could have taken right about here, put in a rock, lifted it up, and then tied it off at a farther side. Just saw my dog hopping across the yard. Now, the inside of this, you can see I've got enough room. Again, with it being a 5x7, it allows me to get deep. I can put my feet down there. It opens up on one side, and so what I would do is put my fire over there. Now, Bill, why would you put your fire on that side? Well, because if you'll notice, it opens up a lot more than this side. I've only got about 3 feet there. I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 feet from tree to opening on the other side. So that would be the side that I would open up to. Now, if I wanted it to be on this side, if I wanted to make sure that I had enough room on this side, then what I would have done is run a different diagonal, okay? I would have run from this corner to that corner as opposed to this corner to that corner. And all it would do is just switch the sides literally so I could put my fire on this side, okay? So that's kind of where we stand from an emergency shelter. And right here, again, both of these are set to where if we got harsh weather, I can go in and use them. I wouldn't have to worry about it. My biggest thing with the lean-to is making sure that the wind is not blowing that direction. I want to make sure it's coming from that direction against my back. It's like we talked about a while ago. Same thing with the plow point. I want to make sure that the wind's coming from this direction, the tail if you will, and not into the opening. Make sense? So there you go. That's your 2-Tip Tuesday for this week. The 5 W's, what are they again? Widowmakers, wildlife, water, wind, and wood. Make sure you remember those when you're trying to set up an emergency shelter. The second one, remember we talked about the 2 5-minute shelters, if you will. Being able to set these up within 5 minutes in case of things like inclement weather. Storms coming in. I know in Florida, I always get a storm in the afternoon. It may be that I'm out and about. I need to go, hey, you know what? It's looking like it's fixing to roll in. Let me go ahead and set that up. It could also be based off of where you are. It could be that the sun is beating down on your head and you can't think straight. But Bill, what if I don't have a tree? So these examples are in the forest, right? In the trees, if you will. However, if you have sticks, if you have something to prop it up against, if you have something to tie it off to, it could be a rock, it could be an outcropping, it could be a stick you've got in the ground. If you're carrying a camera and a tripod, it may be that you anchor it and that becomes one of your anchor points. Okay? So that's the way you think of things, is starting to use your instincts. What do I have? We'll talk about zones in another video, but what do I have with me? What do I have on me? What do I have near me? Those different things are what we deal with on a regular basis when we start looking at using our instincts to survive. So, that in mind, hey, thanks for all the likes and subscribers. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to watch the other 2 Tip Tuesdays. Until then, use your instincts to survive. Thanks for watching. A lot of them.